Hey guys, it's Neil again from Heart of Texas Armory, and today I want to bring you guys a video review of this pretty impressive little tool watch from Cooper Watches out of the UK. This is the Cooper Watches Submaster, and you can see it here on my 6 7/8" wrist, looking really nice, and it does sport a really cool and tactical black PVD finish here, guys. Pretty impressive timepiece when you consider the specs and the price point for this particular watch. So join me today as we take a look at this cool quartz dive watch from Cooper Watches. All right guys, let's go ahead and start this video review by taking a look at the specs for this watch. So we'll start off with case diameter. The Cooper Submaster here has a case diameter of 41.5 millimeters, which I feel that's a really nice size. For my wrist size, I usually prefer watches, particularly dive watches, between 40 and 42 millimeters. So 41.5 is really nice. Now your lug width here for your straps, bands, and bracelets, you're looking at 20 millimeters, probably the most common size. So that's also a nice positive. Lug to lug from this point here to the top up here is a very short, in my opinion, 46.5 millimeters. So this watch almost has a cushion style case because you do have a somewhat large 41.5 case diameter, but a very short lug to lug of 46.5. So it wears a little smaller than that the specs would lead. Case thickness here is really thin. You're looking at 11.5 millimeters, so wears nice and flat on the wrist, and that is a good thing. And you're able to achieve that because this is a quartz watch, of course. The weight on its current aftermarket bracelet here, my scale, I get 139 grams. This watch does have a 60-click unidirectional bezel and an aluminum insert in that bezel there. It does feature a mineral crystal here, which is nice, and a full 300 meters of water resistance. So this is a full dive watch. You could take this scuba diving, and that's really nice. And we'll talk about the price here, which is also pretty impressive. Cooper Watches is a UK-based company, and in British pounds, you can order this watch free shipping from the UK with a supplied black NATO strap for £69, or a matching black PVD bracelet, not this particular one, but one similar, for £89. Those prices in US prices, you're looking at around $90 for the NATO strap version and $115 US for the black PVD bracelet. So overall, a pretty impressive set of specs when you consider that price. So let's go ahead and move on to our talking points, and then we'll close out this video review with the positives and negatives. So the case here on the Cooper Submaster is constructed entirely out of 316 stainless steel, which is to be expected since this is a dive watch. And it does have that really nice matte black PVD finish you're seeing here, which again is a nice touch since this is kind of a military style watch. And I like that it looks really tactical or stealth. It's a nice look. The crown here is a screw down crown located at 3 o'clock, but taking a look at it here from the side, you'll notice that the crown is kind of a little lower than normal, and that's a little odd to me. Doesn't really affect how the watch feels on your wrist, but it does affect when you're operating that crown, screwing it in or screwing it out. It's a little more difficult to reach because you can't really access it from the top here, only from the bottom. So that's a little strange. The case back here is a non-PVD finish stainless steel, and it does have the very nice SBS logo and motto engraved into the back of that case back, which is a nice touch. Now, the dial is one of my favorite things about this watch. I feel that it's just very readable, very clean, and again, easy to read dial. I like the matte black finish here, as well as the contrasting white logo and text here you see on the dial. Just very easy to see everything. The hour markers are also nicely done. The hands here being sword is one of my favorite handset styles, and they do reach all the way out to the seconds and minutes track here around the perimeter, which is nice. The watch also has a framed date window here at 3 o'clock, and that's a very nice touch for a watch in this price point. A lot of watches around the $100 price point are not going to have a framed date window. They're just going to have a cutout. So I like that they have that there. Now the bezel here is probably one of the biggest negatives with this particular watch. The bezel works just fine. It's a 60-click unidirectional bezel, has an aluminum insert, and it looks good, it works fine, but it's very spongy and loose feeling. So you can see me operating the bezel here. Has a decent feel. The grip on the bezel is nicely done. It sounds fine, but the problem is there's a considerable amount of back play here. So you can see I've got the bezel lined up here, and I'm able to rotate it back almost a full minute. So again, not a deal breaker for me. This is a cheaper or entry-level kind of quartz beater watch, but I don't like watches that have that much back play. I wish they would tighten that up. So that's one of the biggest negatives. Again, it doesn't really affect the watch too much because you can still use that bezel just fine. It just feels a little sloppy and loose. The watch does have a mineral crystal, which is nice. I would have preferred it to, of course, have sapphire, but mineral crystal is going to be just fine for something like this. It might pick up a few scratches, but mineral crystal is pretty tough stuff. The watch is a quartz watch. You can see it ticking away here. And the quartz movement here is a Miyota 2115. So very accurate movement here. You're going to probably get plus or minus maybe 5 seconds a month with this particular movement. And you're going to get a battery life of probably 2 to 5 years. So a nice Japanese movement here. So no complaints on the movement. Now the lume is actually pretty solid. You should be seeing a lume shot pop up right now. I was really surprised by the lume. It takes a really bright initial charge and it lasts throughout the night. The initial charge is one of the things that really I first noticed. It is very, very bright when you initially charge it. And it, like I mentioned, it will last through the night. After 8 hours, it's still readable, but it does fade fairly quickly after that initial charge. But overall, the lume is really nice. So for the positives, let's go ahead and just start off with the overall look of this particular timepiece. I really like this watch, how it looks, you know, the black PVD finish, the whole military look. It just looks cool and tactical. So I really, really like that look that it has. The construction overall is also a positive as well, minus the bezel. You know, the case is machined well. The bezel is machined well. Everything looks good. It feels good in the hand. It's got a good weight to it. You know, overall, the construction is very solid. I also like how it's inspired the design here by the Rolex mill sub. You know, the case design is different, but the bezel and the dial are definitely inspired by the Rolex mill sub. So the mill sub is one of my favorite watches of all time. So to me, that's a big positive. You know, your mileage may vary, of course. And I do like the PVD finish. I already mentioned that, but they did a good job on that. It's a nice, clean, matte finish, and I just like the way it looks. That whole stealth look is super cool. The lume is also a positive. I was pretty surprised by the lume when I got this. I was not expecting very good lume with this timepiece. So the lume is very usable. It lasts throughout the night, and there's really not much to complain with the lume. And I'll also mention that this watch is very silent. You know, a lot of quartz watches in this price point are going to be fairly loud. You can hear them ticking even when it's on your wrist away from your ear. But this timepiece here is pretty much silent, and that's probably because this is a 300-meter water-resistant watch here. So they have a very thick crystal in a beefy stainless steel case. So I like that. And like I mentioned, the 300 meters of water resistance is also a positive. You could take this watch scuba diving if you wanted, and that's definitely a positive. Now the negatives here, we already talked about it. The bezel action is a huge negative. It does have that really spongy feel and quite a bit of back play. So that is definitely the biggest negative with this timepiece. And then also that strange kind of crown location there, being a little lower than normal. It's just a little hard to operate that crown. I don't know why they did that, but that's certainly a negative. And I'll mention too, this watch here that I got came with a black NATO strap, and the NATO strap that came with it was not the highest quality. So you can see I've replaced it here with this black PVD engineered bracelet I ordered from Amazon. I'll provide a link for this down in the video description for you guys if you're interested. So to close this video review out on the Cooper Submaster here, is this a watch that I would recommend? I have to say I definitely would. I mean, this watch really kind of surprised me. I love the overall design and construction of this watch, the price point, and the specs that it has. It has a lot going for it here. There's not a lot of watches out there that are going to be built like this and have the specs that it has for the price. So overall, this is going to make an excellent tool or beater watch for me, and it's a watch that I'm definitely going to be wearing quite a bit. I really like it. The only thing I will mention, just like I did in the negatives here, is I wish they would come out with a version 2 of this watch and fix that bezel action. If they could do that, this would be an incredible watch. And they could also maybe look at that crown location just to make it a little easier to operate. But if they fix those two things, this watch would be an absolute home run. But as it sits, it's still one that I recommend because there's not really anything out there on the market like it, particularly in this price point. So overall, it's definitely a very cool watch, so check them out. If you have any questions or comments on this timepiece, leave them down below. I'll do my best to answer them. Y'all guys take care. I'll catch you on the next one.